So, good afternoon and welcome to you all who are joining us in this Vocation Café. The whole idea of it is I meet with people of different walks of life, with the oblates, the priests, the brothers, religious sisters, even have the married couple. And we just simply talk about vocations and the vocation life and what vocation is all about. Recently, I had the chance to meet with the oblates from the other side of the world. They were from Ireland and from Australia, from Philippines. And today I thought we can talk about our oblate ministry and vocation at home. So today I'm meeting Father Tony, who is sitting across the hallway, so we don't have to travel across the world to talk about the vocation. So good afternoon, Father Tony. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I just saw you, I think, like 5 minutes ago.
I know. We had a chance. We've worked together for 20 years, so that will be quite an interesting conversation here. So maybe just introduce yourself to those who might not know you.
Well, I'm Father Tony O'Dell. I'm an oblate. I've been an oblate for about 30 plus years. I'm pastor here at St. Patrick's Parish and CEO of a ministry called DeMazenod Door Outreach Ministry currently.
How long you've been in Hamilton?
Been in Hamilton, this is going on our 10th year.
Gosh, the time flies.
Time flies for sure.
It's hard to believe how quickly that happens. And before you, I know, but I think you can share that with others. This wasn't your first assignment, was it, Hamilton?
No, in fact, my first assignment was after I was ordained a priest, was back to Labrador from where I came. I was back in a Labrador city, Wabush, a mining town in Western Labrador. And I spent, I think, the first 14 years of my ordained life in Labrador City.
Yes, I love that story. When remember those days when the advertisements for vocations were coming up, that was kind of become an oblate and see the world. And here you are, first assignment back to Labrador. Was it a big city where you grew up, or
no? I grew up in a very small fishing community on the coast of Labrador, the south coast of Labrador, a community called West St. Modest, and the population at that time, now it's about 60, 70 people, but back in the day, in the 60s, early 70s, there were about 200, 250 people, and they were basically all fishermen and fish plant workers was the main industry there.
So that's where you got your vocation from the fisherman, became the fisher of men.
Fisher of men, yes. In fact, yeah, it's interesting because back in the day, we were the late 60s, early 70s, we were only getting hydro. I remember when electricity first came to the town. I remember when the first gravel roads were put through and the first vehicles. And we were very isolated back in the late 60s, early 70s. So, and as a result, one of the things, we have one school that served about 5-6 communities.
Wow.
And it was in West St. Modest School, and it was from kindergarten to grade 11. So quite often what happened back in those days was you would go to school, and after your grade 11 graduation, you would most likely you go work in the fish plants or in the fishing industry or related jobs, service jobs around the communities. So there was very few people that was actually leaving. They would settle down right in the small towns, often marry with people from other towns close by. And but it was very few people going on to higher education back in the day.
Yeah, I remember visiting your place a few years ago. And if you remember, we arrived. That was in July. It was very, very foggy day, so we were there like maybe a week or less. But the only one day that actually fog kind of disappeared, and we had a beautiful opportunity to visit around. And I remember joking that I can see that I visited your place, but I cannot say that I saw it because we couldn't even see the ocean behind the house. It was that foggy. It was thick fog.
Yeah, so totally. That happens in the summertime.
No, it was quite an experience.
Mm-hmm.
I see the people are joining us, and I would encourage you, if you have any questions or comments, you can post them in the comments on Facebook. And Kyle, it's good to see you. And you are right. We have a beautiful, beautiful day here in Hamilton. Maybe we should be doing interview inside. I agree with that, but I think we will get a better connection here inside. So we'll go outside afterwards. And as well, you see Mora is joining us, and it's always have that love. Great to see you all. So feel free to post your comment in the comments on Facebook, and questions if you have any, we'll be happy to answer them. Tell me a little bit, like you said, you grew up in a small community, and how did you even get to know the Oblates? I mean,
well, curious enough, we had the pastor in our hometown. Was a Catholic community, and the pastor was an oblate, the missionary oblate of Mary Immaculate that came from Holland, Father
wow.
Jacobs. So as a young fellow, I of course, was an altar server, and quite often after schools, he was an industrious kind of priest, always building something, parish hall or hen houses or pigeon houses or something he was doing. And so every day after school, myself and a lot of the other young guys around would go up and spend a day, evening, straightening out old rusty nails so he could continue his next various projects, and of course serving on the altar, et cetera, et cetera. So I got to know him, and through him the oblates.
It's interesting when you mention hen houses. We will go back to it in a moment later on. But well, like you said, you had a chance to see the Oblates at work, and I think that was Labrador. Actually, was one of the first places when the Oblates came to Canada. They first came to Montreal, to the area of Montreal, but they really didn't want to work in the regular parishes, and that's how they started traveling up north on St. Lawrence River, visiting those little places on the St. Lawrence River. And so it doesn't surprise me that you ended up with a Dutch there who kind of came from all the way from Europe and do that missionary work. It's great to hear that. But like, what prompted for you? Like at some point in your life, you must say to yourself, well, I think this is my way of life, or that's I feel like calling to it. Like, do you remember when that happened, or how did it happen?
Well, what I do remember is, I mean, as a young man in my teens in high school, and I was doing what any other young fellow doing into sports. I wasn't that great at sports, especially hand-eye coordination, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And in the summertime, would be out fishing with my dad or my uncle, or working in the fish plants and stuff. And but I always had this angst, yearning deep within to want to do something different with my life. And at the time, I really did not know what that draw was, other than I found that I was really wanted to find a way where I could help people. That was something, and I thought I was being called into possibly medicine in the beginning. But then again, as I said, nobody or very few people were leaving Labrador to go on for further education at that time. So I didn't have a high self-confidence that I could accomplish the studies. So that further complicated my discernment process. And but I guess God kept finding a way to knock on the door of my mind and my heart and soul, because at about 22 or 23, I know I was really going through a difficult time in my life, not feeling settled, not feeling knowing what I really wanted to do with life, or with this life. And I remember going to our little church in the middle of the afternoon one day, and the church at that time was always opened. And I went in and I sat there and I was saying a prayer before the statue of Our Lady of the Ocean, the Ocean Star, Mary. And I remember at a certain point in that prayer that I felt convinced that I was being called into some sort of a missionary life. And in fact, I left that day and I went home, and remember we had two phones in our house at that time, one on one floor, one on the other. And I went to the floor where there was no one around and made a quiet call to Bishop Peter Sutton, who was the Bishop of Labrador City, Shefferville at that time. and I explained to him what I was thinking about and praying about and wondering about. And so very quickly after that, he set up a meeting with the Oblates in Ottawa, and they invited me to come and kind of live and see. And that's where it all began, and it just nothing changed since then.
It must be quite a cultural shock for you, as you said earlier. Like you were just getting electricity in a small village on this shore of St. Lawrence River of the Atlantic, and moving from that experience to Ottawa. Like, do you remember what was that experience?
Well, I'll tell you a little funny story that happened when I landed in Ottawa. It was Father Chris Rushton, God rest his soul, was supposed to pick me up at the airport. He was in charge of the St. Martin's residence where I was going to be staying. And I had no idea about city life or even the importance and significance of addresses and stuff like that. And when I got there at the airport, I couldn't find Father Chris anywhere. And so finally, I noticed this guy who was on a payphone in the baggage area, and I noticed on the envelope, the brown envelope that he was carrying, it said something about the Catholic School Board. So after he finished his conversation, I went and I excused him and introduced myself and said, you know, I'm in here from Labrador, first time in the city, and a priest was supposed to pick me up an oblate, and he said, do you have the address? Where? I said, I don't know the address, but I said, I do believe they told me that it was on the sunny side with a bank on it.
That's where it is.
And it actually was the address, and I didn't have it at that time, but the address was Sunnyside Avenue, just off Bank Street. But what I had retained in that moment was it was on the sunny side of Ottawa, and it had a bank next to it.
So did you find actually the way to get there?
With that simple little bit of information, we were able to put together where the house actually was.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, it took him and the cab driver a few minutes of discussing it and looking at possibilities and stuff. So finally we figured it out. And they said, do you have a number? And that was the only thing I retained was it was 169. So they figured out it had to be Bank Street, it had to be Sunnyside Avenue, and it must be at 169. So I arrived there, rang the doorbell, and sure enough, and when Father Chris came to the door, he was very, very embarrassed and because he completely forgot about it.
Well, it happens. Not surprised with it. We have a couple of questions. Maybe we'll look at those. Kyle is asking, I'm not quite sure. There is an oblate priest in a parish up north at Barry's Bay.
Yes, that is Father. He was sick very recently. One of our guys.
Oh, I think I know the older one. He was with us in the Atlantic as well.
That's right. He was in Goose Bay at that time.
Oh gosh. Well, Kyle, when the name comes back, we'll tell you. It's remember.
On the top of my lip here, but it'll come out.
And I think this is a very good question from Diane. And because you will get those questions, I've heard a number of times that people will say to us, well, there's St. Pat's, it's a little bit different. Like you are different. Like what that means. What sold you both on being an oblate as opposed to a Franciscan or diocesan or other order?
I didn't know any Franciscans. The only religious priests I knew were the Oblates, but I knew diocesan priests from Newfoundland, and I really didn't feel that I wanted. If I was going to be a priest, I didn't feel like I just wanted to stay in my own home diocese, and if I was going to get into it, I wanted to get into it with all of me, and for me that clearly meant I needed to as much as I was anxious about it at the time, I needed the missionary dimension was where my heart was being drawn and my spirit being drawn.
I think that was very similar for me. It's just different reality. I grew up I'm the city boy, so I grew up in the city actually. And we had a variety of religious orders. We had Franciscans there, we have Jesuits, we have Redemptorists, but we didn't have the Oblates in my hometown. The way that I found out about them was from the Oblate calendar. They produce like a calendar every year with different mission stories and all this stuff. And I think that very similar to you, like the missionary aspect attracted me to the Oblates. And I mean, it's kind of providential. You follow that and you continue and you grow into it as well. Like this is the first initial uh, passion, but you grow into it. I think we have another couple of important questions. Looking from the parents' perspective, Brother Dan asked, were your parents and immediate family supportive of your decision from very beginning?
Yes, in fact, my grandmother used to always, she was a deeply spiritual lady, and that was mom's or dad's mother. And that's where I even, which surprised me, I didn't know at the time, but she would pray the morning office and the evening office. She had the whole collection of those prayers, and but she always would have an intention that one of her grandchildren would enter the priesthood. And I even as a young kid on her knee, I can remember going and spending the night with grandma overnight and stuff, and she'd be have me on her knee while she was saying her evening prayers, and never in 1,000 years did I think that this was going to be something that I would respond to. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It is like, and there's another question from Serena as well, and basically follow up on that question what Brother Dan asked. What would you say to parents that are worried that they're, and I think this is very cultural right now in the reality, in our Canadian reality, that they're worried that their children are giving up more than they're receiving by giving their life to the priesthood?
I mean, it's certainly a valid concern because we live in a world where we are surrounded by this consumer mentality of I need more and I need more money and I need more things and I need more titles and etc. To validate myself. But you know, for me personally, I would say that my life is, to the very best of my ability, given over to God, and what I've received back is 100-fold of what I've given. My generosity can never be outdone by God's generosity, but I really believe that while I may not have all of the materialistic things that other people have, and I might not have a pension when I retire because of the missionary nature of the foul poverty that I've chosen to live by, I think what I receive in blessings far outweighs what I would if I was kind of decided, say, for example, to become a doctor or a nurse or whatever, you know.
Yeah. And I think it takes lots of trust as well. It's kind of like a stepping into unknown, in the sense like you're trusting that God will guide you. And talking about that, I think 10 years ago, I think we both make a little step into unknown and trusting God that God will provide. And we ended up here in St. Patrick. And I remember we had some time to rest after ministry in Labrador, but as well the Bishop Crosby asked us to, what do you want to do here? Like, well, discern what God is calling you to do. And do you remember how we ended up here in St. Patrick?
Well, it was quite a wrestle between our discernment and God's pull. That's for sure. I remember a tremendous priest, God rest his soul, Father Edward House, who has since passed away. In fact, I had the pleasure of giving him his final anointing on Holy Thursday a couple of years ago. But Monsignor House, from the time we moved to Hamilton, he was director of the cathedral then, And he always said from the first day that he met us that he knew the perfect place that we needed to go. And he kept talking about St. Patrick's Church. And I remember that we went around and looked at some places here in the diocese. We never had the intention of even staying here in Hamilton. In fact, when we came here for a sabbatical, to kind of Bishop Douglas Crosby was settling in here, and he didn't have any Oblate community around, and he knew I was going. You and I were going on taking our sabbatical here. Invited us to come and visit him, but we saw this as very transitory, and the Oblates saw it as very transitory as well. But at the end of the day, and all of the different possibilities that came on the table when we were ready to go back into ministry, even much to, I don't think we were even open in the beginning, but God kept drawing us back to St. Patrick's.
Yeah, and I remember when we actually gave the red light, a green light, very hesitantly to Monsignor House, like, let's go and check it out. Remember that when we drove on the main street?
We came down, we drove down Main Street. He was driving, I was in the front seat, you were in the back. And when we came to the corner, he pointed to the church on the corner of Main and Victoria. And as he came down around to come in East Avenue, I felt a tremendous surge of anxiety and saying, oh my God, this is no way we can do this. There's absolutely no way God is calling us to do this. And so I said, Ed, please keep driving, go back up King Street, please, which he did. So we basically circled the church the first time and without even going in.
We came back to the bishop's residence, but like, that's interesting how God keeps calling, and we discern about it. And one day we came on like an incognito on Sunday to check it out. And remember the first thing I told you?
Yes, if we do come here, the first thing we're going to do is change that red carpet.
That's true. It took us 7 years or 8 years to do that, but the carpet is gone. There's another couple of questions we have, and I think this is from Ian, and he refers a little bit, maybe you can tell the story. Before we came to St. Patrick, we went for 4 months to Sacred Heart Parish and Holy Family Parish. Remember that expression of the SWAT team?
Yes.
Where that came from?
Well, we were kind of parachuted into those two parishes on right in the beginning of Holy Week. And so we just showed up one day at both those parishes. Nobody knew that we were coming or why we were coming, and the parishioners were quite curious about, you know, where we came from, who are the Oblates, what are we about, and one of the custodians at one of the places said to me one day as I was arriving, I believe at Sacred Heart Parish, was after we were there about 3 months. He said, I finally figured it out. He said, you guys parachuted in here in the middle of the night, kind of like the SWAT team. And you went to work immediately, and you got a lot of stuff done in a very short order. And so that's how he figured out that somehow or another we were a SWAT team of the religious.
So, like, looking at the question that Ian posted here, these days Oblates have been seen as the SWAT team of the religious, working in parishes and missions that other religious orders might choose not to be assigned to. Did you see the Oblate order in that light when you joined in? Did that help you to decide that Oblate missions was there that you wanted to be?
I certainly knew that was a big piece of the Oblate charism. Anyone's studies for the Oblates, very quickly you get a sense that the training that we get for to work in difficult missions and to establish churches in areas that need to be established, but also in going in areas where the church might be in some sort of trouble or whatever, and trying to renew and re-energize, I guess, the community and its mission. So, but you know, in all honesty, when I came to Hamilton, I would have been. I come from a small fishing town, so I'm not used to inner city. I'm not used to big city living. And so a lot of the ministries that I could see as I started to look seriously at St. Patrick's Church these were big, scary issues for me.
Yeah.
I was not comfortable around the homeless population. I was not comfortable around the addictions that surrounded the parish, and the homelessness, all of this stuff, the panhandling and stuff. Those were issues that I had really no experience with when I came here, and nor did you, I don't think. But in I think in our discernment, I know even Bishop Crosby, I think, was quite surprised the evening we came to tell him that we'd like to be assigned to St. Patrick's Parish. I think he was expecting that we were going to ask for something else, but he was quite, I think, surprised, but very happily so.
Yeah, yeah. It's a different parish, really. Like, how would you describe for the people who don't have an experience of inner city ministry? Like, it's not an ordinary parish that you would kind of imagine. Like, what would be the biggest challenges that you find, or biggest joy that you find in this ministry?
The biggest joy, the biggest challenge, and it's all the same, is that this parish and inner city parishes, I think, has when they get serious about scanning the environment in which they exist and wanting to allow the gospel to be put into action, into life, it means that we have to get out of our offices and we have to get out of our churches and go outside and meet the people on the outside, those who are living on the fringes of society or on the fringes of the church even. And get to know them, get to know their story, and then try to the best of our ability as church, as the body of Christ, to begin to meet some of those needs. And I think that's the whole call of what a missionary is to go outside of the norm and to, get to know people and what their desires and needs are, and to the best of our ability, try to begin to meet some of those needs in concrete ways.
And so true, as Diane says, like it helps you to actually reach out to the real humanity, that's homelessness, the addictions, and it's you're really walking with people, as we call this here, beyond the walls. It's just the ministry goes outside of just the building, like it much more. There is a very unique ministry here, and I remember you told us story that how it begins. Actually, the first thing that happened, you walked for one of the Sunday masses. I mean, that was like first year that we were here. You walk for one of the Sunday masses from North End when we live, and there was a man sitting sleeping actually at the door. Remember? And you kind of walk him up and try to figure out what's happening there. And he told you the story that like he really was addicted, and he knew that he has to go and talk to God. And but door were closed obviously for the night. But he said that was enough for him, that he felt close to God. And that was the beginning actually that we started the DeMazenod Door and the concept of beyond the walls, when homeless Jesus came to our lawn and St. Patrick Parish. Can you tell us a little bit about the DeMazenod Door, how this started and where it's going? And
well, I think, like you said, that the idea for DeMazenod Door certainly was unveiled through that encounter that morning. It was about 7:00 in the morning on a Sunday morning in the springtime, and I was walking from St. Lawrence over to St. Patrick's, and I had my dog with me, TJ. And when I came up to the front doors of the church, I noticed someone laying on the concrete steps that were there. So I went over and gently probed him awake to see what was going on, and he proceeded to tell me quite a story of how he certainly was in the midst of his addictions and going downhill very fast. And the night before, he was running for his life, I guess for some people that he owed some money to or something. And he came across St. Patrick's, and he felt that he would be safe there. So even though he couldn't get inside, he laid down and fell asleep there. So that morning, after I got to chat with him a little bit, find out a little bit about him, what he was going through, he was really hungry and thirsty. So I brought him into the rectory with me and made him a quick breakfast, whatever we had there, and gave him a coffee. And that was kind of the beginning, because also, if you remember when we came there, the other big issue was all around the street of St. Patrick's, the streets of St. Patrick's, there was a lot of panhandling going on, and people were getting seriously injured by aggressive panhandlers. And so we went out and talked to them and got to know why they were being so aggressive and angry, and particularly prisoners coming in and stuff. And it always seemed to keep coming back, like they felt that all they were looking for was food and something to drink. But they felt that the church would, I guess, because a lot of the members of the church were scared of them because of their the way they were reacting, that there was a real them against us approach, both within the church and on the outside of the walls. So I thought, okay, well, there's only one way to deal with this, and it is to, if they're saying they're hungry and they're thirsty, then surely to God, we can give them a sandwich and a cup of coffee. I didn't realize back then when we started that, that was going to grow to what it has grown to today. So I was expecting 10, 15 people max, which was in the early days. And now we're sometimes up to 500 plus.
Yeah. I remember those days, how it started. And we had Rita, our secretary, she had the office right in front of the entrance to the rectory. So if somebody came up, they would just ask for coffee and sandwich, and she would make them as they asked. And it starts growing to the point that people couldn't come into the rectory because the door was always blocked. And I think we are really blessed in that ministry with the school board as well. We are working with the school, and the way that they opened for us for the cooperation with the DeMazenod Door moving into the school. Like, do you remember how that happened? That's the whole concept of it.
The whole concept happened one Sunday evening, 7:15 Mass. At the end of Mass, I put a call out to anyone in the community that might be able to give us a hand to continue to develop this mission. And we were looking for, at the time, a place to move it away from the rectory, because the lines were like 100 deep or more. And so it made it really hard to do the ordinary business of the church, for people to get into to come in for appointments, etc. So one Sunday evening after Mass, I put the call out there and said, this is the program, and we really need to find a home for it and find partners in mission for this. And so Mr. Daly, Pat Daly, the chair of the Catholic School Board, was at that Mass that evening. And afterwards, he came up and chatted with me about it. And we set up a couple of meetings and went and discussed it even further and stuff. And so the school board, in turn, gave us a room in St. Patrick's School, helped us convert it into a kitchen that we could provide these kinds of meals for. And then the other curious thing is we began to thread the program through to the different students in the school, St. Pat's School, but then we went out to other schools as well and helped them achieve some of their Christian service hours and give them some experience of working with the poor, of serving the poor, teaching through the Beatitudes. And so it just kind of grew and grew that way.
I really miss seeing the kids, the students at the DeMazenod Door. Hopefully we'll get over soon that pandemic, so we can welcome them again. But here's the question: like, parishioners here already noticed that there's a fence around the school, and that the school is going down. Like, what will be the future of location for the DeMazenod Door? Like,
it's got a very, very exciting future ahead of it. The school is currently being demolished. The hope is that by 2022, September 2022, the new school will be up and running. And the new school has again incorporated into it a commercial kitchen, which the DeMazenod Door will operate out of. And what's unique about it is that the whole block around St. Patrick's Parish and the school is going to be set up almost like a hub community within a community. So DeMazenod Door guests will have their courtyard on the school property. The students will have their courtyard, and then parishioners will have a courtyard for them to come and go. So, and there will be lots of room for mixing and mingling, but it's really going to be very exciting for those days, for the times ahead, to continue to grow this program and to continue to work with different organizations and school boards, and school board particularly, to continue to develop this missionary approach to actually being able to be concrete in putting the gospel into action.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saying hello here to Kathy. That there's lots of friends who are joining us from all days in Labrador as well as across the country. So welcome to you all. It's good to see you here.
Hey, Kathy.
We saw the DeMazenod Door. The name itself, it came from DeMazenod as the founder of the Oblates. The door, it's basically the place of meeting and welcome and hospitality. And I know that we try to treat all the guests who are coming as guests. It's not just homeless who are coming for the food, but they're our guests. And the program grow from too many different directions. Like, it's not just about feeding the poor. It's not just about the food, isn't it?
No, in fact, the concept of DeMazenod Door Outreach Ministry is meant to meet the concrete needs of the poor, the homeless, the marginalized in inner city Hamilton. So we start off with the first thing you do in meeting a need, at least from our discernment, is you can't discern much if you're hungry or you're thirsty. So you take care of those most basic functions first. And then you reach out and see what are the other needs, the surround supports that these people could truly benefit from. Of course, last year we initiated our DeMazenod Door housing project. And we want to continue to build on that. And currently we have one house near the parish that houses 6 previously homeless men. We have now 2 apartments. We call them St. Eugene's Pad, and they house, one houses a family of immigrant, family new to Canada from the Philippines, and the other, another homeless guy who spent a lot of his years imprisoned, and he is now, we have him housed, and he's now, which is curious, providing security for another arm that we've reached out into since this pandemic, and that is we open our church in the afternoons so that the homeless population can come into the resting hygiene station, and they can sleep in the pews, go to the washroom as needed, access to the washrooms, and there's books for them to read if they want, or artwork that they can do if they want to draw or whatever. We always have fresh muffins and cookies and hot coffees and juice and water that's available to them. So, and that's a new program that was born just out of the pandemic. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to chatting about the next step that is coming up. But before we go there, I just want to pull up a couple of questions that we have here. This one is from Ralph. Can anyone be oblate, or do you have to be to the priesthood?
No, the religious community, the Oblates, we have brothers and priests, and we also have kind of almost like a third order that's just been developing in the last couple of years, which is called associates, Oblate associates, which share the vision and the charism of Eugene DeMazenod, but they don't join religious life per se. They live out their life, their family life, whatever they are. But they share the charism of the Oblate, the spirit of the charism of the Oblates.
It's very true.
We have Brother Dan here with us now. He's a religious brother consecrated to the vows, and he provides music for us. And
I've actually the next Vocation Café, I'll be talking to one of our Oblate associates about the vocation to Oblate associates. So stay tuned and join us again. Looking at other questions that we have here, here's Ian. challenging question. How did oblate training prepare you for the likes of St. Patrick's Parish and all of its uniqueness that maybe wouldn't be taught to her church leaders?
Mm. Well, again, the Oblates were formed basically to respond to difficult ministries and difficult missions, to establish the church, or to rediscover the mission of the church, that of areas where there was tremendous needs that needed to be developed. So in our training, it is. While we do all of the theology and the philosophy, we also do a lot of our internships in poor parishes or poor missions, or in different countries in the world that are where the church is actually struggling. Yeah,
That's very true. And actually, right now, it's the requirement information that before even committing to the final vows or the priesthood, like every oblate has to have an experience in the mission, in the missionary life, in the challenges, or something that is extraordinary than just the regular parish. So probably I'm not sure if you can have a course or to have a class how to do ministry in St. Pat's with all its uniqueness. You will get the principles, you will get the background, but you learn as you experience it. Like that's what I found for myself. Like I mean, I've never had an opportunity. As I said, I grew up in the city, but I've never had a chance to work closely in the inner city with all the issues that are happening. So I think you just learn as you go. Like how many times we had something happening during the mass, somebody will yell or throw the books across the church, and we just look at each other, well, just another day in St. Pat's. I mean, you just learn that as you go through it. There's one question that I really loved, and also a little bit here, just let me find it. I appreciate that story and how I am sure that God certainly was leading you both. Can you tell us about the story of your wonderful dogs, labs, and how they are so valuable in your lives? I
wow,
love this
that's a
question.
beautiful question, Joan. Thank you for asking that, because the dogs are part of our life and part of our ministry, and have been since the early days in Labrador. We started out with two, TJ and Sutton, when we were in Labrador, and the funny thing was, we used them extensively in our youth ministry and in our hospital and retirement homes. And one of the funny things that would often happen in Lab City when we were there, we'd get a call from the hospital, and it wouldn't be so much for the priest to come to pray the last rites or something, but somebody was really ill and dying basically, but they wanted one of the dogs to go and sit with them for a bit. So, and that happened over and over again. Here in Hamilton, our two older dogs, they moved here with us, and they lived good long lives. One was 15, the other one was 16, I believe, which is huge for labs. So we adopted, after those two labs that were Nesbitt and Carlin, and they were being trained as service dogs. And we were blessed. They were being trained, actually, they would bring them to St. Pat's Church for the 7:15 Mass, both of them as puppies, as they were being trained. And so we were blessed and lucky enough to be able to access those two dogs, and we use them now in our school ministries. And it's amazing to see, particularly kids that are going through a rough time, a difficult time, when you bring those dogs into the schools, how very quickly the dogs will discover who those kids are who are going through issues, and will bring comfort to them, and a real sense of peace in those children. We also use them in our retirement homes and other ministries around, even with our DeMazenod Door Outreach ministries. Those dogs are very friendly with our guests, and everyone loves to see them and pet them, and they love being seen, and they love being petted.
Yes, I witnessed actually the conversation today before we went for mass, because Sherry, our DeMazenod Door coordinator, she has her dog Maz, named after DeMazenod, with her usually in the office at the DeMazenod Door, and JC is getting a dog, and her brother as well. And they kind of jokingly said that probably our parish should be named after St. Francis rather than St. Patrick. We have all animals around. Talking about animals, I know that the big announcement is coming up pretty soon, so I don't want you to tell too much about it, but at least give us a little pick what's coming with the DeMazenod Door. We saw the pictures on the Facebook with you with plants in the school. We saw this morning some chicken and eggs. Can you tell us at least a little bit, well, what's that's all about? I
Well,
know announcement
I
will be
think it's
happening soon.
the next huge jump in ministry for DeMazenod Door Outreach Ministry will be announced publicly in the next week. There will be a huge press release coming out. I'll say this much, that with regards to DeMazenod Door Outreach Ministries, we said when we came here we wanted to work to help alleviate the hunger and poverty found in the neighborhood. This next big initiative will go to the heart of the matter. It will provide a lot of other people with ways that they can give back with their time and their gifts and their talents, and it will truly support the poor and the marginalized in our communities here in Hamilton. So that's as much as I'm going to give you today.
That's fair, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's so exciting, and can't wait for next week or in a few days when we will hear the whole story. There's one more question that, and I think brings us to the foundation of it, and probably you remember the way that it happened. On Sundays, before we begin the Mass, we always read, I always say, we pray our mission statement, the vision for the parish. And basically, it's not just a nice prayer. I believe that not only priests, but as well everyone in the parish trying to live out what we pray every single Sunday. Do you remember how we came up to the mission statement? How that started? When we went there, we want to get to know where we got into and kind of understand the culture, understand the neighborhood. We had someone giving us presentation, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the way that developed. We did a number of things when we first came to St. Patrick's, in the sense of understanding the neighborhood, scanning the environment, however you want to name that. But at the time, one of the major workshops that we had was with a reporter from the Hamilton Spectator came and spent an afternoon with the pastoral team, and he had just written an article or series of articles called Code Red, which basically gave all of the research about why Hamilton was in Code Red, probably the most poorest area in all of Canada was downtown Hamilton, and which is kind of interesting because we have Toronto just to the next to us neighborly, but apparently what was going on here was at the heart of all of it. And so Steve Buse came and gave us a report on his articles that he had written, and we brought in some other people that helped us. I remember some businessmen in the area, and Bob Morelli, Bernie Morelli, who was the Ward 3 councillor, coming and meeting with us and kind of giving us some of his knowledge, sharing some of his wonderful knowledge with us. And it was through those early encounters where we were scanning our environment that we were able to pull together a parish mission statement that was going to help restore our parish, renew our parish, but also lead our parish outside its doors into the community, outside beyond the walls.
And I think the big part as well was our participation in the Amazing Parish conference and Amazing Parish movement overall. When we get those foundations, how to really have a have a parish that I don't want to say modern, but the parish that is it's present to the current realities, that the parish that can embrace what the current challenges of the world are presenting. And I think that Amazing Parish truly set the tone for us when we came. It was great experience. I remember that first trip that we took for that was actually very first Amazing Parish in Denver, Colorado. We had a few
That's
people
right.
that came with us, and we were just sitting like, this is just great. We just have to start living it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it takes time to implement all of this, but I think that was the foundation.
Well, I
Being
think one of
faithful.
the significant things that we've tried to do here at St. Patrick's Parish, as we set about the renewal, was that we made sure that the people that were in ministry with us were as empowered as we could get them through investment of making these workshops available to them, so that the way we designed our pastoral team, it isn't the priest and then the lay people, but rather it is the pastoral team, and we all have our own unique gifts and talents, and we all have our own unique responsibilities, and together we make decisions from the ground up rather than the clerical from the top down, and I think through all of the education that you and I have had since with Amazing Parish and with Good Leaders, Good Shepherds, etc., I think that has really benefited the parish as we put it into practice.
That's very true. Just to answer Barb's question, she's asking if that session will be shared or replayed. It will be saved. When we finish live here, it will be automatically stored, so you can go back to the Facebook page wherever you're watching it from. But as well, it will be saved for the YouTube, so it will be available for viewing later on. Diane reminds us sharing with a part of our mission statement, and I think that's what we really try to do here. We share our faith through hospitality and fellowship, actively embracing the call to compassion by loving others as Christ loves us. I think that's beautifully bring us to the end of our conversation. I really appreciate talking to you, even though it's just across the hallway. But I think it's a great insight about the oblate life, about the passion. And I appreciate your passion that you have for this ministry, because I think it inspires me as well. I mean, stuck there for 20 years or so, and it's still going. So that's a wonderful thing to do, working together, ministry together. So one more question I would ask you to, or maybe you talk about your personal vocation, you talk about your experience of St. Pat's, you talk about the DeMazenod Door. If there is a young man watching this conversation here and maybe thinking about and listening to you, like your story, and listening to what's happening in St. Pat's, what's happening with the DeMazenod Door, and maybe he just ask that question, like, maybe God is calling me to that life, the oblate life, religious life. What would you say to him as an advice?
I would say probably something that I heard in my early years. Come join the Oblates and see the world.
Well, good start.
And we'll bring you back to Hamilton, even if you're from Hamilton, and you can join the team. You know, seriously, what I would say is if you have that question sitting in the back of your brain somewhere, which is where it was for me, I had to overcome all kinds of insecurities, and I've had to overcome all kinds of doubts, and my self-confidence, as I said in the beginning, was not great because of where I was, born and raised, and didn't have access to a lot of funds or material resources or anything. But I had the thoughts in the back somewhere, and I would say to any young man or any young woman for that matter, but if we're talking about the Oblates, that don't be afraid to entertain those thoughts. Don't be afraid to pray about them, and don't be afraid to talk to people about them, because if God is knocking on the door of your mind or your soul or your heart, then for me, as I said, while I might not ever be materially rich, I am rich in spirit. I've been blessed gracefully and beautifully in my life, and I could choose nothing better than to give my life to the gospel. And I think I really do believe God is calling young men today to this missionary spirit.
Amen to this. Thank you for that, and thank you for a great conversation we have. I want to thank you to all of you who join us in this conversation, ask the questions and comment on it. It was really great to connect this way and get engaged. I wish you a blessed Holy Week. This is the most holiest times of the church's life, and in a very real way. If you are looking for the way to connect, or because you are in the lockdown like we are and you don't know what to do this week, would be more than happy if you join us watching online. We will have most of the services streamed live on St. Patrick Facebook page and website. So once again, thank you very much for that. Thank you for the conversations. Keep praying for oblate vocations to the religious life, to the priesthood, and stay tuned with the next day. As I said, I'll be talking about the Oblate Association and what that means for us, and how the charism is being lived out with the Oblate Associates.
And having said that, Father Jarek, just before we go, that we have begun serious discussions and plans about bringing the possibility of Oblate Association here to our parish at St. Patrick's as well.
That's very true, very true. And we are on the way, because I believe that's the way that the charism doesn't belong to us. Like Saint Eugene has gave the charism to the church, and we want to share that with us. So stay tuned, and there'll be more information coming up. God bless.
God bless. Thank you.